Chapter 1. My boyfriend was paralyzed from the knees down, yet he'd been secretly ordering takeout behind my back. I'd had enough. I glared at him coldly. We're done. Elias Tang stared at me, stunned for a beat, then replied calmly, Fine. I'll move out tomorrow. Just then an anxious little boy's voice echoed in my belly. Mom, don't break up with him. Dad didn't call a prostitute. This is all that rebirth girl's scheme. She knows Dad will become a billionaire tycoon someday, so she's plotting to tear you two apart so she can take your place. After you break up, she'll send people to trick you into the mountains to be a baby-making machine. You'll end up driven insane, a raving lunatic. Meanwhile, she'll stay by Dad's side as he recovers and builds his empire, eventually becoming the envy of every woman, a wealthy tycoon's wife. Mom, your son fought tooth and nail to be reborn into this life. Please don't be foolish. Snapping back to my senses, I choked out through tears, confronting him. You didn't even ask why I wanted to break up before agreeing. Have you stopped loving me a long time ago? Elias's expression flickered with surprise, but his tone remained steady. I'm in this condition now. I get why you'd want to leave. Just say it straight, no need for excuses or lies. I pressed my advantage, refusing to back down. You'd rather break up than ask me one question. How is that not proof you don't love me anymore? You're such a scumbag. Elias looked utterly helpless. Alright, I'll ask. Why do you want to break up? I spun around, rummaging through the trash can until I fished out the black lace panties that had shattered my heart. I never wear anything like this. Tell me, whose are these? Elias frowned, thinking hard for 2 seconds. They're not mine either. Me. He added earnestly, I don't have that kind of kink. My face twisted involuntarily, barely keeping up the act. Thankfully, I regained my composure quickly. You just don't love me anymore. You'd rather sneak a prostitute into our home than touch me. Anyway, I was never in the wrong. Everything was always his fault. Elias looked utterly shocked and confused. When did I ever call a prostitute? If you didn't, then how did these end up in our house? A look of realization dawned on Elias's face, as if he'd finally pieced together why I was throwing such a fit. He said seriously, I didn't call a prostitute. I have no idea how those got here. Then, to my disbelief, he shot me a suspicious glance. There are only 2 of us living here. Believe it or not, I never did anything like that. He paused briefly, then sighed helplessly again. I'll say it once more, if you want to break up, just tell me. No need to make up reasons that don't exist. My heart sank, growing colder by the second. But the son in my belly was beside himself with anxiety. Oh no. Dad thinks Mom is deliberately framing him, turning the tables to give herself a legitimate excuse to break up. He must be completely heartbroken right now. But it's okay, Mom. You can secretly give birth to me. When Dad gets rich later, we can demand tons of child support. We'll live like royalty, just the 2 of us. And when he kicks the bucket someday, I'll even inherit part of his fortune. None of that matters right now. The only thing that counts is you don't get tricked by that man into going to the mountains to be a baby-making machine. Otherwise, I'll die in your womb and you'll end up a crazy woman. So sleepy. Gonna take a nap before waking up to mourn our fate. The boy mumbled his last words and fell silent. My heart turned to ice. I burst into loud, wrenching sobs. No one had been to our house lately. How on earth did those panties end up here? Why couldn't Elias hear our son's inner voice too? Chapter 2. Elias was truly devastated. I was crying my heart out, yet not only did he not comfort me, he just stared at me, expressionless. I wiped away my tears, ready to kick up a fuss again, when there was a knock at the door. Elias wheeled himself over to open it. Standing outside was his junior fellow apprentice and colleague Fin Fong. Fin grinned and greeted me warmly. Hi, sister-in-law. Then he turned to Elias. Senior brother, you ready? We can head out now. Elias nodded softly. Luggage? Head out. I glanced around the room and spotted a suitcase by the coffee table. My heart skipped a beat and I tensed up instantly. What are you planning to do? Fin hurried to explain. Sister-in-law, the boss asked me to accompany senior brother to an out-of-town conference. We'll be gone for about a week. My voice thick with nasal congestion, I asked Elias, are you coming back here? We were just boyfriend and girlfriend. Breaking up was as simple as him saying the word. I had no real hold over him. Fin sensed the awkward tension, his eyes widening in surprise. He clamped his mouth shut, suddenly tight-lipped. Elias looked at me deeply, his tone cool and detached. Yes. From the look on his face, I knew he was still upset about what had happened earlier. But there was no time to clear things up now. We'd have to talk it out over the phone or wait until he came back. You have to keep your word. Elias paused, then added, think carefully about what I said earlier. I'll respect whatever decision you make. I seethed with anger, but there was nothing I could do. Once a rift forms, it's never easy to mend. In Elias's mind, since the lace panties had nothing to do with him, I must have thrown them in the trash myself, then screamed thief to frame him, all to get a clean break. It was truly like swallowing a bitter pill, suffering in silence. Damn that rebirth girl. I saw Elias and Finn off to the gate of our residential complex. After the ride-hailing car drove away with them, I turned around and headed to the nearby pharmacy to buy a pregnancy test kit. As soon as I got home, I rushed into the bathroom with the kit. Unsurprisingly, the result was 2 bright red lines. My last period had been 2.5 months ago. My menstrual cycle had never been regular. Stress often made it stop altogether. 2 months prior, Elias had gotten into a car accident that damaged his nerves, leaving him paralyzed below the knees. Ever since then, I'd been living in a constant state of anxiety. I'd lost my appetite and dropped 2 kilograms in weight, so I hadn't thought twice about my missed period. I never expected I'd be pregnant. Elias was actually kind-hearted and soft-hearted. For the baby's sake, he wouldn't force me to break up, right? I'd planned to ask our son who the rebirth girl was as soon as he woke up, but the little guy hadn't stirred since he'd fallen asleep. Chapter 3. Now that I was certain I was pregnant, I wavered between telling Elias immediately or waiting until he came back. After some thought, I decided to tell him right away to leave no room for that rebirth girl to meddle. I snapped a photo of the pregnancy test and sent it to him. He was probably on the plane at the time, so it took 3 hours for him to reply. Are you sure? It was just text, no way to tell his tone. If anything, he sounded cold and distant. Swallowing down my discomfort, I texted back. I tested with 2 different brands. I snapped a photo of the second test and sent it to him too. The chat box showed typing for what felt like an eternity. After about a minute, his message finally popped up. What do you want to do? I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't happy about it. But then I remembered the misunderstanding before he left, and forced myself to hold back my anger. Let's get married first. I don't want to have a baby out of wedlock. Before Elias's accident, we'd been on the verge of getting our marriage certificate. After he was paralyzed, the plan had been put on hold. I'd asked him a week ago when we could go to the Civil Affairs Bureau. He'd said we should wait a while longer. I knew he'd been feeling depressed and defeated, so I didn't push him. I'd planned to bring it up again when he was in a better mood, but instead of his spirits lifting, we'd been hit with this rebirth girl's scheme to drive a wedge between us. This time, Elias stayed silent even longer. After roughly 3 minutes, his reply came through. My legs might stay like this forever. Marriage is a major life decision. Think carefully before you make up your mind. Take the next few days to consider it. We'll discuss what to do when I get back. I couldn't tell if he was saying this out of anger, or if he truly was thinking of me. Either way, those 2 sentences made my blood boil. Suit yourself. If you don't want this baby, fine. I'd raise the child on my own, all by myself. Furious, I blocked him on every single one of his contact methods. Chapter 3. I curled up on the sofa, staring blankly at the empty room. Memories of our happy days together came flooding back, and my nose turned sour despite my best efforts to hold back tears. Elias Tang and I had been alumni at university. He was 3 grades above me. Elias had been the campus heartthrob, tall, handsome, brilliant, and utterly devoted. Apart from being a little aloof, he was perfect in every way. Compared to the outstanding Elias, I was just an ordinary girl. I had nothing to boast about except my looks. From the moment I stepped onto campus as a freshman, I'd been head over heels for him. I'd mustered up all my courage to chase after him for over 3 years, finally winning him over right before I graduated with my bachelor's degree, when he was finishing his master's. After we got together, the aloof campus heartthrob vanished completely. In front of me, he turned into the ultimate boyfriend, attentive and loving in every way. I loved him deeply, even after he'd become paralyzed, even after he'd lost the use of his legs. If I hadn't found those lace panties, I never would have mentioned breaking up. Just thinking about the panties made me feel a surge of frustration and regret. Why had I spoken so recklessly? If I just hesitated for 10 more seconds, things wouldn't have spiraled into this mess. If he really insisted on breaking up, I'd have no choice but to accept the harsh reality. And what about the little one growing inside me? If I hadn't heard his inner voice, I'd have had no hesitation in getting rid of the baby. But the image of that dejected little voice kept lingering in my mind, making it impossible for me to be cruel enough to go through with it. Worst case scenario, like our son had said, I could give birth to him and demand child support from Elias. That rebirth girl was stooping to underhanded tricks to steal my boyfriend. Why shouldn't I have his child to get back at her? The thought sparked a dark, vengeful glimmer in my heart. 30 minutes after blocking Elias's number, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Fin Fong. I knew it must be Elias on the line. After a moment of hesitation, I hit the answer button. His deep, hoarse voice came through the receiver, raw with pain, evidence that he was suffering just as much as I was. "Baby, it's me." The tears I'd been desperately holding back spilled over in an instant. I wiped them away roughly, my voice trembling with anger. "Don't call me that. I'm not your baby anymore. Spit it out, what do you want?" "Baby, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things to you." Elias paused, then continued, his voice softening with sincerity. "I was just afraid I'd hold you back, both me and the baby. You're still so young. You deserve better than this." My tears flowed even harder, fueled by a fresh wave of rage. I've never thought that way. Not once. The fact that he couldn't walk didn't mean he couldn't use his brain or his hands to provide for us. I could take care of all the housework. I could even be the one to take the initiative in bed. My best friend had always teased me for being hopelessly love-struck. I was willing to charge headfirst into this with him, but he was already trying to back out. Even if he thought he was doing it for my own good, I couldn't feel the least bit grateful. Elias sounded flustered now. "Don't cry, baby. I'm the one at fault. When I get back, we'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau right away. The wedding can wait, okay?" I choked out between sobs. "I told you before, the wedding doesn't matter. The betrothal gifts and the 3 gold pieces can wait until you're more stable financially." Alright, I admitted it, I was hopelessly, irrevocably in love with him. Nothing short of catching him in the act of cheating would ever make me give up on him. "Baby, don't cry. I'm sorry. Don't be mad at me anymore. We'll get married as soon as I get back, okay?" I couldn't reply, I was crying too hard to speak. 10 minutes later, his gentle reassurances finally calmed me down enough to catch my breath. After hanging up the phone, I unblocked all his contact information and we stayed in constant touch from then on. He replied to every single one of my messages the second he saw them, except when he was in meetings or asleep. I could feel our relationship growing stronger than ever, as if we'd returned to the heady days of our passionate courtship. My heart was filled with overwhelming joy at having him back. But then I thought about that rebirth girl, her identity still a mystery, and a wave of unease washed over me. I had a terrible feeling that she wasn't done scheming yet. Chapter 4. The week flew by in the blink of an eye. The night before Elias was due back, we'd made plans to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau first thing the next morning to get our marriage certificate. His flight was scheduled to land at 2 in the morning, so he wouldn't be home until around 3. I'd intended to wait up for him, but by 1 o'clock, exhaustion had gotten the better of me, and I'd collapsed into bed and fallen fast asleep. I slept straight through until I woke up naturally. When I opened my eyes, the room was bathed in bright sunlight. I grabbed my phone in a panic. It was 9:15 a.m. Elias should have been home ages ago, but he wasn't in bed beside me. I scrambled out of bed barefoot and rushed into the living room. He wasn't there either. I searched every corner of the house, but there was no sign of him anywhere. Helpless, I picked up my phone and dialed his number. The phone rang for what felt like an eternity before he finally answered. I was seething with anger, but I forced myself to keep it in check. "Have you gotten home yet? We should break up." Our voices overlapped as we spoke at the exact same time. I froze, convinced I'd misheard him. My voice trembled with disbelief. "What did you say?" He repeated the words slowly, each one clear and unwavering like a death sentence. "We should break up." I still couldn't wrap my head around it. Break up? Yes. Break up. In that split second, it felt like a sharp arrow had pierced straight through my heart, shattering it into a million pieces. I refused to accept this reality. I didn't want to accept it, but I had no choice but to face the truth. I took a deep, shuddering breath, fighting to keep my voice steady. "What about the baby?" "It's up to you. If you don't want to have it, you can get an abortion. If you do, then have it. Raise it yourself and I'll give you child support. If you don't want to raise it, give it to me. You won't have to pay me a cent." His tone was casual, as if he were discussing something trivial, something that had nothing to do with us. But every single word that fell from his lips felt like a sharp knife, stabbing relentlessly at my already shattered heart. "Why?" "There's no special reason really. I just feel tired. There's a strange phenomenon that happens when you're so stunned you can't even speak. You find yourself laughing for no reason at all. That's exactly what happened to me. A hollow, bitter laugh escaped my lips. Tired. Elias's voice came through the receiver, firm and final. Yes. You have a terrible temper. You get angry over nothing and you're so hard to comfort. I'm tired right now, tired of myself, tired of everything. I don't have the time or energy left to coddle you every single day. So that was it. I couldn't deny a single word he'd said. I did have a bad temper. I was hard to please. Sometimes even I couldn't stand myself. Maybe even without that rebirth girl's meddling, we never would have made it in the end. Tears streamed down my face as I forced out a laugh. Fine. Let's break up. Elias fell silent for a moment, then asked again, what do you plan to do about the baby? That's none of your business. I'll handle it myself. I kept my answer vague. I didn't want him to know I was going to keep the baby. And I certainly didn't want our son, if he suddenly woke up and heard, to find out I'd even considered getting rid of him. Elias must have assumed I was going to have an abortion. He spoke again, his voice softening slightly with what sounded like guilt. Abortion takes a huge toll on your body. I only have 50,000 yuan right now, but I'll give it all to you as compensation. I'll give you another 50,000 when I get my commission from the next project. A cold, bitter laugh escaped my lips. How generous of you. What else could I say? The procedure would only cost a few thousand yuan, yet he was offering me 100,000, far more than the deadbeat guys who made their girlfriends split the abortion fees. Elias took a deep breath as if struggling to contain his emotions, then spoke again in a calm, steady voice. I can't take care of you myself with my legs like this. I'll hire a postpartum nurse to look after you. I don't need your charity. I'll hire my own. I knew in my gut that the rebirth girl was probably behind this latest disaster. But his indifferent, detached attitude made me lose all desire to ask for the truth. I'd have this baby and I'd raise him well just to spite them both. After all, our son would never blame me for it. All right then. I'll add another 20,000 to the compensation. I'll pack my things and move out right away. Don't bother. I'm the one moving out. Chapter 5. My best friend had rented a 2-bedroom apartment near her company last month. She'd been looking for a female roommate to split the rent, and it seemed she hadn't found anyone suitable yet. I shot her a text right away. She replied that she was in talks with someone, but she'd turn that person down if I wanted to move in. I told her I'd be there that afternoon. She immediately lit up with excitement, saying she'd clean the room thoroughly so I could move in without lifting a finger. With a place to stay sorted out, I rolled up my sleeves and started packing my luggage. I cursed through my tears as I stuffed my clothes into suitcases. You bastard. Jerk. Who cares about breaking up anyway? It's no big deal. Break up? I just took a nap. How did the sky fall all of a sudden? Can we please not break up? Having a mom is the most important thing, but having a dad makes it even better. Who am I kidding? This isn't about happiness at all. It's about dying all over again. I've got the script in my hands, but I can't change a single thing. I'm so useless. My heart hurts. I wanna cry. Wah. Don't worry, son. Mom won't let you die. And even though Mom knows the script now, she's just as useless as you are. My heart hurts so bad I wanna cry too. Wah. Apart from daily necessities, most of the stuff in the house belonged to me, so packing was an absolute chore. After 2 hours of struggling, I'd only finished half of it. Exhausted and starving, I ended up bursting into tears out of sheer frustration. Useless. I cried into the pillow for a while, then forced myself to get back to work. Once I'd cleared out the bedroom, I moved on to the living room. I was halfway through packing when Elias walked in. He looked exhausted and haggard, his eyes bloodshot, like he hadn't slept a wink all night. I glanced at him, then quickly looked away, continuing to fold my clothes in silence. After about 2 minutes, Elias spoke up, his voice quiet and unexpected. No need to rush. You can take your time to find a new place before moving out. I paused for a split second, then replied coldly, I already found one. Elias didn't say anything else. On the top shelf of the bookcase sat a teddy bear. I dragged over a stool and climbed up. Elias's eyes shot open with alarm. What are you doing? I snapped at him without looking back. It's none of your business. Elias stared at me, his lips parting like he wanted to say something, but he finally clamped his mouth shut. I stood on tiptoes, stretching to reach the teddy bear on the highest shelf. When I turned around to climb down, I met Elias's eyes, filled with such intense worry that my nose suddenly turned sour. We locked gazes for a few seconds, and my eyes welled up with tears all over again. Do you even want this baby or not? No. Alright then. Just my wishful thinking. I hopped down from the stool in a fit of anger. Elias visibly jumped, startled by my recklessness. His first instinct was to reach out and catch me, but his legs couldn't support him to stand up. He quickly realized his mistake and awkwardly pulled his hands back. Don't do that next time. It's dangerous. Since you don't want this baby anyway, what does it matter if I'm in danger? It was a short stool. I'd been absolutely sure I wouldn't get hurt jumping down. After all, before I found out I was pregnant, I jumped off much higher steps without a second thought. Elias bit his lip. You matter. I hated him like this, acting like he cared so much about me when he was the one who dumped me for being too much trouble. It was like he was trying to make himself look like the victim who couldn't bear to let me go. Elias Tang, I hate you. I stormed back into the bedroom, slamming the door shut behind me as hard as I could, then threw myself onto the bed and sobbed uncontrollably. I didn't cry for long. I forced myself to calm down, then pulled out my phone to book a moving company. Once the time was confirmed, I dragged all my packed luggage to the doorway of the living room. Elias was still sitting in the living room watching me bustle around in silence. After I'd gathered everything together, Elias suddenly spoke up again. It's already noon. Why don't you have lunch before you leave? I'll order takeout. I snapped at him. I'm not hungry. Elias fell silent once more. After about 10 seconds he wheeled himself into the study. Tears prickled at the corners of my eyes, threatening to spill over again. I looked up at the ceiling, roughly wiping away the tears, then sat down on the sofa to chat with my best friend. She didn't know I was pregnant and she was excitedly trying to set me up on a blind date. She said her boyfriend had a rich and handsome best friend and asked if I wanted to meet him. I didn't believe in love anymore, not after this. The last thing I wanted was to go on a date. Besides, with a baby growing inside me, the last thing I wanted to do was lead someone on. I politely declined her offer. Chapter 6. We chatted for about 10 minutes when there was a knock at the door. Thinking it was the moving company, I jumped up and hurried to answer it. Standing outside was Fin Fong holding a folder in his hand. He broke into a big smile when he saw me. Hi, sister-in-law. I'm here to drop off some documents for senior brother. I stepped aside to let him in. Finn's eyes widened when he saw all the packed luggage in the living room. Whoa, are you and senior brother moving? I shook my head, my face expressionless. I'm moving. And don't call me sister-in-law anymore. Finn's smile vanished, replaced by a look of shock. He stared at me, his lips moving like he wanted to ask something, but he held back. Just then Elias opened the door to the study and walked out. Finn quickly stepped forward, handing the folder to Elias, then mumbled a quick goodbye and rushed out of the apartment. Elias took the folder and turned right back into the study, like he couldn't stand the sight of me for one more second. I stood in front of the study door, throwing a silent fit of punches and kicks, then flopped back down onto the sofa to stare blankly into space. About 3 minutes later my phone buzzed with a long message from Finn. Sister-in-law, forgive me for overstepping. Senior brother was in such a good mood the entire time we were on this business trip. He kept talking about how he was going to marry you as soon as we got back, and how he'd treat me to dinner to celebrate after you two got your marriage certificate. He was still really happy on the way back until someone sent him a message. After he texted back and forth with that person for a while, his mood suddenly turned sour for no reason. I have a feeling that person said something terrible to him. No matter what happened, I hope you two can talk it out properly. Please don't let a misunderstanding tear you apart. I didn't reply. After about 3 minutes, another message popped up from Finn. The night before we came back, senior brother and I went out for a drink. He had a bit too much to drink and he started crying to me. He said he didn't want to hold you back, but he also couldn't bear to let you go. He said he felt so selfish, knowing he'd only be a burden to you, yet still wanting to marry you anyway. Sister-in-law, the boss helped senior brother find an amazing acupuncture master. The master said there's still a chance senior brother could walk again. I don't know if he told you that. I'm rambling on and on. Anyway, if you two still have feelings for each other, don't let a misunderstanding make you miss out on each other forever. When I finally snapped back to my senses, my vision was blurred with tears. I managed a bitter smile and typed back a single word, thanks. Finn replied with you're welcome, and didn't try to persuade me any further. I hesitated for a long time between going to confront Elias and just walking away for good. In the end I chose to leave. I knew Elias too well. He wasn't the kind of person who made decisions lightly or changed them easily. If I went to ask him now, I'd probably just get the same cold rejection again. Why humiliate myself like that? It wasn't worth it. I sat on the sofa in a daze, waiting numbly for the moving company to arrive. Suddenly the doorbell rang. I jumped, startled, and scrambled to my feet to answer it. I was in such a hurry that I tripped over a suitcase, crashing hard to the floor. Ah! A sharp, stabbing pain shot through my abdomen almost immediately. I clambered to my knees, clutching my stomach tightly. Why does it hurt so bad? Am I gonna die again? Oh my God, I'm just a baby. Don't be so cruel to me. Mom, save your precious son. I'm gonna die. The door to the study flew open. Elias wheeled himself out in a panic, his face white with terror. In his haste, the wheel of his chair got caught on the corner of the wall. His body lurched forward with the momentum and he toppled out of the wheelchair and onto the floor. Ignoring the pain, he pushed himself up with his hands and crawled toward me as fast as he could. Chapter 7. I don't know how much time passed before I woke up in a hospital bed in the obstetrics and gynecology ward. I froze for 2 seconds. The first thing I did after coming to my senses was clutch my stomach, panicking and crying out, "Baby! Don't worry. The baby is okay." Elias Tang's voice came from beside me. I turned my head to stare at him while carefully assessing how my body felt. Apart from a dull ache in my lower abdomen, there were no other discomforts. But I couldn't be sure the baby was still there. Just as I was about to ring the call bell to summon a nurse and find out what was going on, my son's inner voice echoed in my head. "Mom, your son almost kicked the bucket. Watch where you're walking next time, okay?" I let out a long, shaky breath of relief, muttering to myself, "Don't worry, baby. Mom will be more careful next time." Good. But preferably there won't be a next time. Your baby boy has had enough of dying already. Sniffle, sniffle. Yeah, no more next times. If there is a next time, then you and I might as well go reincarnate together. What do you feel like eating? I'll order takeout. Elias suddenly butted in. I didn't want to look at him, so I turned my face away. I don't need you to take care of me. I'll hire a caregiver. You can leave now. As for the baby, I'm keeping it. You just need to pay child support on time from now on. I won't let him bother your life. After a suffocating silence, Elias spoke, his voice almost cold and heartless. You'd better think this through carefully. The baby will only be a burden to you. A surge of rage flared up inside me. I spun around, ready to yell at him, but remembering we were in a hospital, I quickly lowered my voice. I'll admit it, no matter how hard I try to avoid it, this baby's existence will inevitably affect your life to some extent. But he's already 3 months old now. He has a heartbeat, a fully formed body, and, who knows, he might have even developed self-awareness already. I grabbed his hand and pressed it against my abdomen. You need to remember, he is my child. He has nothing to do with you. It's none of your business whether I give birth to him or not. You have no right to make that decision for me. Elias stared at me, remaining silent. My son, however, was absolutely furious. That old fart is going too far. Breaking up with Mom is one thing, but now he wants Mom to abort me. Since you're being so heartless, old fart, don't blame me for being ruthless. I wish you'll have a son who's tall and handsome, and I curse you to never have children of your own, yet be surrounded by grandchildren. Elias's eyes widened little by little, a look of pure terror creeping onto his face. He stammered, "Yao Yao. Is there someone talking inside your stomach?" Holy crap. The old fart can hear me cursing him. So what if he heard me? You want my life, can't I call you a few names in return? Stupid old fart. Idiotic old fart. I'm talking about you, you jerk. I wish you'll never have children of your own, yet be surrounded by grandchildren. Elias's face twisted into an odd expression. Yao Yao. There really is someone talking inside your stomach. I was equally shocked and astonished. Chapter 8. My son held a grudge against Elias for wanting me to abort him. He kept hurling vicious curses at Elias for several minutes straight before finally yawning and drifting off to sleep. If his energy hadn't run out, I suspected he would have kept yelling forever. Elias's expression shifted from sheer terror at first, to guilt and helplessness, and finally to an amused, exasperated smile. Once he was certain our son wouldn't wake up to continue his tirade, Elias looked at me with a complicated expression. Could you hear his voice this whole time? I was still angry, so I ignored him, yanking my hand out of his grasp and turning my back to him. He's not a monster, he's my son. I won't let anyone hurt him. Whoever dares to lay a finger on him will have to go through me first. Elias wheeled his chair as close to the bed as possible, then rested his head on my waist, his voice cracking with emotion. Baby, I'm sorry. I don't want to break up with you. I don't want to lose our child. Please forgive me just one more chance, okay? Give me one more chance. I hated myself for being so weak. Even though he treated me so horribly, the second he showed even the slightest hint of vulnerability, my heart ached and softened involuntarily. Elias Tang, I'm not some lapdog you can call whenever you want and kick to the curb whenever you're done with me. And stop calling me baby. I'm not your baby anymore. His voice choked up again. I never wanted to break up with you either. But I was terrified that I'd never be able to walk again. I was afraid that I and the baby would become a permanent burden to you. I didn't want to ruin your whole life. I let out a cold laugh. You knew I didn't want to break up, yet you forced me to anyway. Is making me miserable supposed to be good for me? Elias was overwhelmed with regret. I thought it was better to rip off the band-aid quickly and suffer a short pain than to drag it out for a lifetime of agony. Besides, I didn't know I'd recover, let alone that I'd become a billionaire someday. If I'd known that, I would have never broken up with you even if you'd beaten me to death. Baby. Please give me one more chance. To be honest, even though I was still angry, neither my heart nor my head wanted to break up with him. After all, he was going to be a billionaire tycoon in the future. Our son was still waiting to inherit his fortune. I turned around, glaring at him indignantly. Finn said that on the way back you were in a good mood until you texted someone and then you suddenly got upset. What the hell happened? Spit it out and tell me the truth. Elias lowered his eyes. A man named Milo Song sent me a friend request. He told me that you and he were seeing each other. He sent me screenshots of your chat history. In them, you said you were only staying with me out of pity, and that you were too embarrassed to break up with me. And there's more. What more? He also sent photos of you having dinner with him. And going into a hotel together. I was so angry I could have exploded. First of all, Milo Song is just a client I was working with. We had no personal relationship whatsoever. Last Saturday night he suddenly said there were some details in the contract we needed to discuss, so he asked me to meet him at a restaurant. He was the client, the one holding all the cards. I couldn't afford to offend him, so I had no choice but to go. Second of all, after I talked things through with him, I went straight home. When the hell did I check into a hotel with him? Elias pulled out his phone, scrolling through his chat history with Milo Song and showing it to me. The chat screenshots Milo had sent him did have my profile picture and username, but just because the profile picture and username are the same, does that mean the person chatting with him was me? Elias thought for 2 seconds, then shook his head vigorously. That's right. It takes nothing more than a few clicks to set the same profile picture and username as someone else. As for the photos of the dinner and the hotel, I'll admit the person in the dinner photo is me. But the person who went into the hotel with him is definitely not me. Milo had secretly taken a photo of me from the front while we were eating. I couldn't deny that was me. But the person who'd entered the hotel with him was only shown from the back. The woman had the same height and build as me and was wearing the exact same clothes I'd had on that day, so from behind she looked almost identical to me. But when you put those two photos together, anyone, even Elias, would have instinctively assumed it was the same person. Especially with the chat history as proof. I had to hand it to Milo Song, he'd certainly gone all out to frame me. After the incident with the panties, I'd bought a hidden camera online and installed it in the living room, hiding it inside that teddy bear. Worried Elias wouldn't believe me, I pulled out my phone and brought up the surveillance footage from that day for him to see. The footage showed that I'd left the house at 5:30 p.m. and returned home at 8 p.m. on the dot. After deducting the time spent traveling back and forth, I'd only been out long enough for a single meal. There was no way I'd had time to check into a hotel with Milo Song. After watching the footage, Elias felt even more guilty. He grabbed my hand and buried his face in it. I'm so sorry. I was so angry and wronged, but the second I remembered what he'd said earlier, I couldn't help but laugh in exasperation. You said I could give birth to the baby and hand it over to you to raise. Weren't you worried the baby might not be yours? Elias mumbled into my hand, his voice muffled. I knew you'd only give him to me if he was mine. Ha! I scoffed. Chapter 9. I told Elias everything I'd learned from our son's inner voice. I told him about the existence of the rebirth girl, about how he would eventually recover from his paralysis, and how he would go on to become a multi-billionaire tech tycoon. I also told him about our drastically different fates in our past life, after we'd gone our separate ways. Instead of feeling smug about the prospect of his recovery and future fortune, Elias was consumed by deep remorse over marrying that rebirth girl in our past life. When it came to what happened in our previous life, the rebirth girl's actions were undeniably unforgivable, but Elias and I were also to blame, me especially. Our failure to communicate openly and honestly was a major factor that led to our relationship falling apart. If it weren't for our son spoiling the plot by speaking to me from the womb, we would have almost certainly repeated the same mistakes as our past selves. Speaking of our son, little guy had an incredibly strong will to live. Just 3 days later, I met the discharge criteria and was allowed to leave the hospital. I'll admit it, I really was hard to appease. Even though I'd already made up my mind to forgive Elias, I still gave him the silent treatment for a whole week. Finally, after a week, I'd cooled off enough to let bygones be bygones, only for our son to wake up again. Ever since Elias had touched my belly that day and heard our son's voice, he'd been able to listen to the little guy's inner thoughts unconditionally too. As soon as our son woke up, he started hurling a string of curses at Elias. Elias knew he was in the wrong, so despite his annoyance he had no choice but to endure it. But our son had an extremely long memory. He kept up his tirade for a whole month, showing no signs of letting up. In the end, Elias had had enough. He threatened our son that if he didn't stop cursing, he'd never buy him any toys or snacks once he was born. Only then did the little guy grudgingly stop his verbal assault. During this time, Elias and I took a day off to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau and get our marriage certificate. Elias had originally wanted to buy me a diamond ring, but since diamonds were such a poor investment, I opted for a gold ring instead. On the day we got married, we treated Finn to dinner, and even made a pact to ask him to be our best man at our wedding ceremony later. Thanks to our son's spoilers, we also finally identified the scheming rebirth girl. She was an intern named Zara Lynn at Elias's company, once his junior sister back in university whom he'd mentored. And Milo Song, of course, was the man she'd sent to seduce me and frame me. Even after Elias and I got married, Milo still tried to hit on me, and Zara kept stirring up trouble between us several times. It wasn't until Elias caught them red-handed that they finally resigned and slunk away. But Zara wasn't one to give up easily. One day on my way to a prenatal checkup, a woman riding a shared electric scooter suddenly swerved toward me, nearly knocking me over. Even though the woman was wearing a mask and a hat, I recognized her as Zara Lynn from the look of intense jealousy and resentment in her eyes. She'd fled the scene quickly, and I had no concrete evidence to prove she'd done it on purpose, so I had no choice but to let it go. After that incident, Elias hired a burly, no-nonsense lady to stay by my side and take care of me around the clock. While I was waiting to give birth, Elias underwent professional acupuncture treatment. 3 months later, he started to regain sensation in his legs. 6 months later, he could stand up with the help of crutches. A year and a half later, he finally threw away his crutches and walked independently again. On our son's 3rd birthday, we held our wedding ceremony. It wasn't particularly grand or lavish, but it was warm and intimate, perfect for us. But on that very day, Zara Lynn, in a last-ditch effort to ruin our happiness, colluded with human traffickers, trying to kidnap our son amid the chaos. Thankfully, Elias and I had been prepared for her schemes. Our security guards caught the traffickers red-handed on the spot. Under intense questioning by the police, the traffickers soon confessed to their crimes, and implicated Zara Lynn as their accomplice. When Zara was arrested, she was still screaming hysterically that she was the rebirth one, that she was the real female lead of this story, and so on and so forth. Everyone except Elias and me dismissed her as a raving lunatic. Naturally, we weren't going to let her get away with faking insanity to avoid jail time. Luckily for us, her acting skills were far from convincing, so she wasn't declared mentally ill by the authorities. Another thing worth mentioning, after our son was born, he turned into a perfectly normal baby boy. But Elias had never forgotten all the things our son had said while he was still in my womb. I had no doubt that if our son ever dared to be a naughty little troublemaker in the future, he'd be in for a lot of loving discipline from his father. A chaotic, laughter-filled life as a family of 3 was clearly on the horizon.